Stop. The system is rigged against you from the second you step onto the terminal carpet. Modern aviation isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's a high-stakes game where airlines bank on your ignorance to pad their bottom lines. One forgotten piece of fruit in your carry-on can trigger a $500 fine and a lifetime ban from expedited security programs. One poorly phrased answer to a customs officer can lead to immediate deportation. While you're sitting in that cramped middle seat, your body is undergoing physiological shifts you aren't even aware of, including your brain physically shrinking due to extreme dehydration. They might owe you over $1,500 in cold, hard cash for your trouble, but they'll try to buy you off with a measly voucher that expires in 6 months. You need a survival guide to navigate this landscape. Here are 18 rules to ensure you walk out of the airport with your dignity, your health, and your money intact. Here is Rule 1 of 18. 85% of your travel experience is decided in the first 7 seconds of an interaction. Most travelers fail this test before they even open their mouths because they project a sense of frantic energy that gate agents are trained to flag. Consider the case of Evelyn, a 22-year-old graphic designer from Boston. She was standing at a gate at Copenhagen Airport, CPH, her hands shaking as she dug through a cluttered tote bag for her passport. A long line was forming behind her, and the tension was palpable. The gate agent wasn't just watching her search. He was evaluating her as a potential delay. When you look frantic, you become a target for extra scrutiny. The airline industry runs on a razor-thin schedule, and agents will often look for reasons to remove problem passengers before they board. The fix is rooted in psychology and preparation. Before you ever enter the boarding line, your documents should be out and ready. Do not keep them in a hidden pocket or a zippered compartment. Hold your passport and boarding pass at chest level, visible and steady. Stand with your feet shoulder-width apart to project authority and calm. This isn't just about speed. It's about signaling that you are a professional traveler who knows the rules. In Copenhagen, Evelyn finally found her passport. But because she looked so disorganized, the agent decided to put her through a secondary check. He pulled her aside to measure her carry-on suitcase in the metal sizer. It was exactly 22.5 inches long, which is just half an inch over the limit. A calm, organized traveler often gets a pass on these minor infractions, but a frantic one gets the $65 gate check fee. Reality check. Being organized isn't a magic wand that overrides every airline policy. If your bag is 10 pounds overweight, a smile won't save your wallet from a heavy fee. However, looking like a pro usually stops the agent from looking for a reason to penalize you in the first place. Evelyn paid her fee and boarded, but she started her vacation stressed and $65 poorer. She saved a little time by finding her passport eventually, but that loss is nothing compared to the $600 you stand to lose when Rule 2 hits you at the immigration booth. Here is Rule 2 of 18. You must confirm your exact departure date and have proof of it before your feet touch foreign soil. When Luna, a 28-year-old art director from New York, arrived at Nice Côte d'Azur Airport, NCE, in France, she thought the hard part was over. She approached the immigration booth, handed over her passport, and smiled. But then the officer asked a simple question. "When are you leaving France?" Luna shrugged and said, In about a week or so, I think. To Luna, this was a casual estimate of a relaxing vacation. To the officer, this was a massive red flag. Ambiguity in an immigration interview suggests you might be planning to stay illegally or seek unauthorized work. The airline won't tell you this, but they are often fined heavily if they fly a passenger into a country who is then denied entry. Because of this, immigration officers are under immense pressure to filter out anyone who doesn't have a clear, documented plan. Luna's confusion grew as she fumbled with her phone to find her return flight email, but the airport Wi-Fi was spotty. The more she struggled, the more suspicious she appeared. Stress is often interpreted as deception in these high-pressure environments. The fix is remarkably simple. Have a specific date ready and a digital or physical copy of your return itinerary accessible. If you're traveling on a one-way ticket, you must be able to explain your onward travel plans in detail. Precision wins every time in a government interview. Reality check. Being vague makes you an immediate target for secondary screening, which can last for hours. Politeness paired with a clear, documented plan is your only real defense. Luna was eventually allowed through after she managed to pull up her flight confirmation, but the interrogation left her shaken. She was safe for now, but she was about to face a much more expensive hurdle. Knowing your dates is vital, but that pressure is nothing compared to the legal minefield of Rule 3, the agricultural trap. Here is Rule 3 of 18. You are legally required to declare every single item of food in your possession, no matter how small or insignificant it seems. Daniel, a 45-year-old sales manager, learned this the hard way at Phoenix Sky Harbor, PHX. He had just finished a long flight from London and was heading toward the exit after passing the initial immigration check. He felt invincible. He had his stamp and his bags. But as he walked toward the final customs exit, a second officer pointed him toward the agricultural X-ray line. Daniel remembered the apple he had tucked into his bag during the flight, a small 5-ounce piece of fruit he'd saved for later. To Daniel, it was just a snack. To the Customs and Border Protection Specialist, it was a biological hazard. The officer didn't care that the apple was organic or bought at a reputable shop in the UK. The United States has incredibly strict biosecurity laws designed to protect domestic agriculture from foreign pests and diseases. By failing to check yes on the customs form under the food category, Daniel had technically committed a federal violation. He was hit with a $300 on-the-spot fine. Here is the fix. Declare everything. If you can eat it, mark it down. Most officers will simply tell you to toss the item in a specialized bin if you declare it, and you'll walk away without a penalty. But if you hide it, even accidentally, it results in a permanent mark on your traveler record. Daniel watched as they processed his fine, realizing he could have bought 100 bags of apples for that price. Use the trash cans before you hit that final line. It is your last chance to avoid a nightmare. Daniel paid the fine, but his day was ruined. That $300 snack was a disaster, but it pales in comparison to the risk of being kicked out of the country entirely under Rule 4. Here is Rule 4 of 18. Never use the words work or help when describing the purpose of a leisure visit. Sophia, a 31-year-old marketing specialist, arrived at Portland International, PDX, on a Tuesday afternoon. She was visiting a close friend who was opening a new boutique, and Sophia planned to spend 3 weeks assisting with the interior displays. When the officer asked why she was in the United States, she smiled and said, "I'm here to help my friend with her new business." In Sophia's mind, she was being a good friend. In the officer's mind, she had just confessed to illegal labor. Under a standard tourist visa, or an ESTA, any form of work, even if it is unpaid or for a friend, is strictly prohibited. Sophia didn't realize that helping looks exactly like unpaid labor to a government official. She was led to a sterile secondary screening room where her phone was seized and her messages were searched for evidence of an employment agreement. The airline won't warn you about this, but they profit from your flight regardless of whether you are admitted or deported. The fix is to be extremely precise with your language. If your primary purpose is vacation, your answer should be, "I am here for tourism and sightseeing." Do not volunteer details about assisting a business, even if no money is changing hands. Sophia was eventually denied entry and sent back on the next flight to London, a trip that cost her thousands and resulted in a 10-year ban from the US. One wrong word can end your travel dreams. But even the right words won't save you if you end up in the back room described in Rule 5. Here is Rule 5 of 18. If you are pulled into secondary questioning, your priority is to remain calm and keep your answers as brief as possible. Every single day, over 20,000 travelers are pulled into these rooms at major hubs like Vienna International, VIE. Scarlett, a 52-year-old pediatrician from Austin, was traveling to a medical conference in Austria when she was pulled aside. No reason was given. The officer simply kept her passport and pointed to a windowless door. Scarlett was furious. She had a connecting flight in 45 minutes and began to demand an explanation, raising her voice and checking her watch repeatedly. This was her biggest mistake. In a secondary screening environment, the officers hold all the cards. Shouting or acting entitled only confirms their suspicion that you might be hiding something. It feels like state-sanctioned kidnapping, and it's designed to be intimidating. Inside that room, your rights are extremely limited compared to a standard police interaction on the street. The fix is to stop talking. Use short, factual sentences. Yes, no. I am a pediatrician. Do not offer stories. Do not mention your connections. And do not demand a lawyer immediately unless you are being formally charged, as this can actually prolong the administrative interview process. Scarlett eventually realized that her anger was only making the process slower. She calmed down, answered 3 basic questions about her medical license, and was released. However, she missed her flight and had to pay $400 for a last-minute replacement ticket. Reality check. Being right doesn't mean you'll make your flight. Politeness is a tool you use to get out of the room faster. You survived the interrogation, but your documents are still a liability if you haven't followed Rule 6. Here is Rule 6 of 18. You must carry a specific insurance letter that explicitly mentions your medical coverage limits when traveling to certain regions. Luke, a 26-year-old civil engineer from Cleveland, found this out at the check-in counter at Cleveland Hopkins, CLE. He was heading to Paris for a dream vacation, but the agent wouldn't give him a boarding pass. "I need to see your proof of medical coverage for at least $32,000, she said. Luke was confused. He had insurance through his high-end credit card, but he didn't have the specific document required by the Schengen Agreement. The airline won't tell you this until the very last second. But for many international travelers, having insurance isn't enough. You must have proof of that insurance in a format the border agents recognize. The magic number for Europe is 30,000 euros, which is roughly 32,000 US dollars. This must cover emergency medical expenses and, crucially, repatriation. Without this Schengen letter, an airline can legally refuse to board you because they don't want to be responsible for flying you back if you are turned away at the border. The fix is to call your insurer a week before your trip and ask for a Schengen visa letter. Most major U.S. health insurers can generate this PDF in minutes. Luke spent 3 frantic hours on the phone in Terminal B, nearly missing his flight while begging a customer service rep for the document. He made it, but the stress was unnecessary. Understand that most travelers get lucky and are never asked. But if you hit a strict agent, your vacation ends at the check-in desk. Even with your papers in order, you need to be ready for the invisible tracking of Rule 7. Here is Rule 7 of 18. The era of physical passport stamps is rapidly ending, and you are now tracked by a digital, invisible clock that is far more accurate. Nora, a 39-year-old financial advisor, landed at Milan Malpensa, MXP, and noticed that the officer didn't even reach for an ink pad. He just scanned her passport and pointed her toward the exit. Nora felt a pang of disappointment. She loved those ink trophies in her passport. But she didn't realize that the digital shadow she left behind was far more dangerous than a stamp. The European Union and many other regions are moving toward fully biometric and digital tracking systems. They are banking on your ignorance of exactly how many days you have spent in the region. In the old days, you could flip through your pages and count your stamps. Now, the system calculates your stay to the second. If you overstay your 90-day limit in the Schengen zone by even 1 hour, the system will automatically flag you the next time you try to enter or leave. The fix is to use a Schengen calculator app or keep a manual log of every entry and exit. Most travelers miss this until they are hit with a 3-figure fine or a multi-year ban. Nora passed through Milan without a stamp, but her digital clock was ticking. She stayed for 88 days and left without an issue, but only because she was meticulously tracking her dates. Reality check. The system isn't a trap, it's just perfect. It doesn't make mistakes, and it doesn't take excuses. But digital tracking is the least of your worries when Rule 8 hits you at the security checkpoint. Here is Rule 8 of 18. Your portable power bank could get you pulled out of the security line and forced to abandon your expensive tech. Elizabeth, a 47-year-old real estate agent from Pennsylvania, was at Pittsburgh International, PIT, when her bag was pulled off the belt. The TSA agent pulled out her massive 30,000 milliamp-hour power bank. Elizabeth had bought it specifically so she wouldn't run out of juice during her long flight to London. She thought she was being smart. Instead, she was being told she couldn't board with it. The FAA and international aviation authorities have a strict limit on lithium-ion batteries. They cannot exceed 100 watt-hours. Elizabeth's charger was roughly 111 watt-hours. The airline won't warn you about this during booking, but these batteries are considered a fire hazard in the sky. If they catch fire, they are nearly impossible to extinguish with standard onboard equipment. The fix is to check the label on your battery for the WH rating. If it's not listed, multiply the milliamp hours by the voltage, usually 3.7, and divide by 1,000. If the number is over 100, you technically need airline permission to carry it, and many will simply say no. Elizabeth had to toss her $90 battery into the hazardous waste bin right there in the terminal. It was an expensive and embarrassing lesson. Knowledge is power, but the wrong kind of power will cost you. That battery was a loss, but it's nothing compared to the frustration of Rule 9's liquid limits. Here is Rule 9 of 18. Do not assume the liquid ban has been lifted just because you saw a headline about new 3D scanners. Noah, a 55-year-old mechanical engineer, arrived at Chicago O'Hare, ORD, with a full 32-ounce bottle of expensive electrolyte water. He had read that new technology was making the 3-ounce rule obsolete. He walked up to the belt with confidence. The agent stopped him, took the bottle, and threw it in the trash. Noah tried to argue, pointing to his phone and the news reports. The agent didn't care. Noah had entered a legacy security lane. The fix is to understand that progress is uneven. The ban only lifts if you are in a lane equipped with a 3D computed tomography, CT, scanner. These machines are huge, rotating monsters that can identify liquids instantly, allowing you to keep them in your bag. But most airports, including O'Hare, still have hundreds of old flat-box X-ray machines that can't tell the difference between water and something dangerous. Scan the ceiling signs for advanced imaging, or CT lanes, before you commit to a line. If you don't see the big round machine, your water is going in the bin. Noah lost his water because he didn't check the gear. Technology beats the ban, but only if the technology is actually there. Noah's frustration was high, but his wallet was about to get a boost from the secrets of Rule 10. Here is Rule 10 of 18. You are entitled to an automatic cash refund if your flight is significantly delayed or canceled, and you should never settle for a voucher. Sebastian, a 41-year-old software architect, was at Boston Logan, BOS, when his flight to London was scrapped due to a technical glitch. The gate agent was handing out pieces of paper like they were candy. "Here is a $200 flight credit for your trouble," she said. Sebastian almost took it. But he remembered the new Department of Transportation rules. The system is rigged to favor the airline's credit system, not your bank account. Vouchers often come with blackout dates and expiration windows that make them nearly worthless for the average traveler. As of 2024, if your flight is canceled for any reason or delayed by more than 3 hours domestically, the airline is required to offer you a full refund to your original form of payment if you choose not to travel on their alternative flight. The fix is to say the magic words, "I am declining the voucher and requesting a refund to my original payment method as per DOT regulations." The airline won't volunteer this information because they want to keep your cash in their ecosystem. Sebastian insisted on his refund and used the money to book a flight on a different carrier, leaving 2 hours later. Cash is king, and you should never let the airline hold yours hostage. You secured your refund, but what if they kick you off a flight that's actually taking off? That's where Rule 11 comes in. Here is Rule 11 of 18. If you are involuntarily bumped from an overbooked flight, you are entitled to up to $1,550 in cash. Ava, a 33-year-old dentist, was at Raleigh-Durham, RDU, for a 6 o'clock flight. The gate was crowded, and the agent announced they were overbooked. They asked for volunteers to take a later flight in exchange for a $300 voucher. No one moved. Then the agent called Ava's name. She was being denied boarding. Ava was upset, but she knew the law. Federal law states that if an airline bumps you against your will and cannot get you to your destination within 1 hour of your original arrival time, they owe you money. If the delay is more than 2 hours, they owe you 400% of your one-way fare, capped at $1,550. The airline will try to offer you a meal ticket or a cheap voucher first, banking on your ignorance of the federal cap. The fix is to refuse the first offer and ask for a written statement of your rights and a check on the spot. Ava did exactly that. She walked away with a check for over $1,500 and was booked on a flight the next morning. She spent the night in a nice hotel and still came out ahead. This only works if you don't volunteer. Once you raise your hand for that voucher, you waive your right to the big payout. You saved your wallet, but what about your gear? Rule 12 covers the baggage nightmare. Here is Rule 12 of 18. The airline is legally liable for up to $3,800 if they lose your luggage on a domestic flight. Abigail, a 24-year-old student, stood at the baggage carousel at Helsinki Airport, HEL, as the belt ground to a halt. Her bag was nowhere to be seen. She went to the service desk, and the agent offered her a $50 comfort kit and a smile. Abigail was exhausted and almost walked away. But that tiny voucher is a trap designed to make you go away quietly. For international trips, liability is governed by treaties like the Montreal Convention, which provides significant compensation for lost or delayed items. For domestic U.S. flights, that limit is currently $3,800. The airline banks on you not knowing these numbers. The fix is to file a Property Irregularity Report, PIR, before you leave the airport terminal. Do not wait until you get to your hotel. Demand the paperwork and list every high-value item in your bag. Take a photo of the completed form. Abigail refused the $50 Band-Aid, filed her PIR, and because her bag contained her expensive camera gear and winter clothing, she eventually received a check for over $2,000. If you walk away without that report, you lose all your leverage. You protected your bags, but now you have to survive the flight itself. Rule 13 is about your physical survival at 30,000 feet. Here is Rule 13 of 18. You must drink at least 8 ounces of water for every hour you are in the air to prevent your brain from physically shrinking. Michael, a 60-year-old professor, landed at Stockholm Arlanda, ARN, feeling like his head was in a vice. He had a pounding migraine and felt completely disoriented. He blamed it on the stress of travel, but the cause was biological. The air inside an airplane cabin is kept at less than 10% humidity. That's drier than the Sahara Desert. At that altitude, your body is constantly losing moisture through your skin and breath. Studies have shown that extreme dehydration can cause the brain tissue to lose volume and pull away slightly from the skull, which is the direct cause of that agonizing travel headache. The airline won't tell you this because they want to sell you $10 sodas and salty snacks that only make the problem worse. They profit from your thirst. The fix is to bring an empty reusable bottle through security and fill it up before boarding. Add an electrolyte tablet to ensure your cells actually absorb the water rather than just flushing it out. Michael chose coffee and pretzels during his 8-hour flight, a cheap snack that led to an expensive mistake. He spent his first 2 days in Sweden in a dark room, recovering from a preventable ailment. Don't be Michael. Dehydration is dangerous, but Rule 14 addresses a risk that is potentially deadly. Here is Rule 14 of 18. You must move your legs and perform calf exercises every hour to prevent the formation of a life-threatening blood clot. Asher, a 36-year-old data scientist, was flying from Prague, PRG, to Seattle. He had a window seat and didn't want to disturb his neighbors, so he sat perfectly still for 9 hours. When he finally stood up after landing, his right calf felt tight and sore, like he'd pulled a muscle. He ignored it. 2 days later, he was in the emergency room with a pulmonary embolism. The airline won't tell you this, but sitting immobile in a pressurized cabin is a biological ticking clock. Deep vein thrombosis, DVT, occurs when blood pools in your lower legs and forms a clot, which can then travel to your lungs. Dehydration makes your blood thicker and more prone to clotting, compounding the risk. The fix is simple. Perform 10 calf raises every hour right in your seat. Flex your toes toward your shins and then point them away. If possible, walk to the back of the plane and stand for 5 minutes. Wear compression socks with a rating of 15 to 20 millimeters of mercury to help pump blood back towards your heart. Asher was lucky and recovered, but many travelers aren't. Move your legs or risk everything. Surviving the flight is the first step. Getting off the plane with your gear is Rule 15. Here is Rule 15 of 18. You should volunteer to gate check your carry-on bag for free to secure early boarding and avoid the bin wars. David, a 44-year-old systems analyst, was at Munich Airport, MUC, waiting for his flight back to Newark. The gate area was a scene of pure chaos. Everyone was hovering around the boarding lane, desperate to be the first on the plane to secure a spot for their suitcase. David didn't join the scrum. He sat comfortably in a chair and waited. Airlines are desperate to avoid takeoff delays caused by passengers hunting for overhead bin space. Because of this, gate agents will often ask for volunteers to check their carry-ons to their final destination for free. David stepped up immediately. Not only did he save the usual $40 checked bag fee, but as a thank you, the agent moved him to an earlier boarding group. He walked onto the plane with nothing but his laptop, found his seat in seconds, and watched the rest of the passengers struggle with their oversized luggage. By the time the plane landed, his bag was waiting for him at the carousel. He bypassed the stress and the cost. Subscribe to Beat the System, because while David won the bin war, Chloe lost a different battle in Rule 16. Here is Rule 16 of 18. A single piece of fruit from the airplane snack tray can cost you your global entry status and a $500 fine. Chloe, a 51-year-old librarian, was flying through Minneapolis-St. Paul, MSP. During the flight, the attendant gave her an apple as part of the meal service. Chloe wasn't hungry, so she tucked it into her purse. When she reached the customs hall, she used the global entry kiosk and checked No for agricultural products. She had completely forgotten about the apple. The X-ray machine at the final exit didn't forget. The officer pulled her aside, found the apple, and immediately revoked her global entry status. Chloe was devastated. She had spent years enjoying the 5-minute security lines, and now it was gone forever. To the government, an undeclared piece of fruit is a high-level security violation. They are banking on your ignorance of how seriously they take biosecurity. The fix is to treat the airplane as a bubble. Anything that is given to you on the plane, fruit, meat, sandwiches, must stay on the plane or be thrown in the specialized bins before customs. If you do take it, you must declare it. Chloe paid the fine and now spends 2 hours in security lines every time she travels. Honest declaration is your only shield. But your physical gear isn't the only thing they can search, as you'll see in Rule 17. Here is Rule 17 of 18. You should power down your electronic devices completely before reaching a border checkpoint to protect your digital privacy. Aria, a 27-year-old UX researcher, was traveling through Frankfurt. She was tired and had her phone in her pocket. A border officer pulled her aside and asked her to unlock the device. Aria felt her stomach drop. Her entire life was on that phone. Banking apps, private messages, and sensitive work documents. In many countries, including the US and several European nations, your standard privacy rights are significantly reduced at the border. Officers can often demand to search your device without a warrant. The fix is a technical one. When you power a phone down completely, it enters a "before first unlock" state. This often requires a passcode rather than just a fingerprint or facial recognition to decrypt the data. In some jurisdictions, it is legally harder for them to compel you to provide a memorized passcode than it is to force you to use your thumbprint. Furthermore, consider moving sensitive apps or photos to a cloud-based folder and deleting the local copies before you land. Aria complied with the search, but because she had a travel phone with minimal data, the officer found nothing of interest. It's not a perfect shield, but it's the best defense you have. You protected your digital life, but what happens when the digital world fails you in Rule 18? Here is Rule 18 of 18. You must save all your travel documents, hotel addresses, and confirmation numbers for offline use. Jack, a 38-year-old photographer, landed at Orlando International, MCO, after a 10-hour flight. He was exhausted and just wanted to get to his hotel. But when he reached the immigration line, the airport Wi-Fi was down and his cellular data wasn't roaming. He had no way to access his email to find the address of his rental home. The officer at the booth was getting impatient. "I need the physical address where you are staying, sir," he said. Jack was paralyzed. He had no signal, no paper backup, and no way to prove he had a place to stay. The airline won't tell you this, but modern airports are notorious for dead zones where technology fails. The fix is simple and old school. Take a screenshot of every important document, or, better yet, print a single sheet of paper with your itinerary and addresses. A physical notebook is a traveler's best friend in a crisis. Jack eventually had to pay for an expensive roaming pass just to load one email, losing $40 and an hour of his life to pure stress. He made it to his hotel, but the lesson was clear. If you don't know these rules, the airport will take your money and your time every single trip. Don't be the passenger they take advantage of. Hit subscribe and let's beat the system together.